Hi, this is April.
Hey, it's Missy.
And this is the SheelaNaGig podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome! Hope everyone is doing well. Each week, of course, we present and explore our own SheelaNaGig, a woman whose strength and perseverance empowers us, has led her to greatness, somebody who inspires us, and maybe even someone you haven't heard of. So we're excited to share them with you. It could be somebody you've heard of, but maybe you don't know the whole story. We just want to bring some light to our Sheilas, so we're super excited that you are here and tuned in today.
Well, I just want to say light as opposed to understanding. The last light that Missy really shined on us was the story of Pocahontas. And I wouldn't characterize that as light, as in nice and light. It was quite heavy and dark. And yeah. I can't stop thinking about it. But otherwise...
Some of my stuff is a little dark, I have to say.
Well, but also the very... we just covered Florence Lawrence.
Yeah.
And that was another very sad story.
Yeah. But important, nonetheless.
Both of those stories were important.
Well, it's just like, you know, missing and murdered Indigenous women. Like, yes, it's horrific and it's sad, but it's so important to be shared that people know about it.
It is. So,
you know, and
we try to be light, but
and we like to think, too, that we learn. We learn from history, but not always.
Not always.
We like to think we try to learn from history.
True.
Yeah.
So speaking of history, is today any special day in history?
Well, this is funny because we're doing SheelaNaGig in the nighttime, which we never do. Mm-mm. I think this is the first time it's actually dark out.
Yes.
Yeah, because April's usually in bed by now, but...
That is a gross exaggeration. I will be in bed in about an hour. Not now.
Okay, well, you'll be driving in an hour. So, but, yeah, things just went a little different today. Things kind of were unexpected.
A little cattywampus, as they say.
Oh, cattywampus, yeah. It's true. So, I said to April, you know what? We should have a glass. I made some tea, and then I was like, you know what? Do you want a glass of wine instead?
And I said no.
But
just for the record, I said no.
I could see the look on her face. Like, I could see she really wanted a glass of wine. So I said, you know what? I'm going to make us some tea and pour us some wine.
And we are. We're drinking tea and wine.
And then come to find out, because I like to look up what holidays that are going on. Today is National Drink Wine Day.
So all we are doing is complying with the national holiday.
Exactly. We are acknowledging a very important holiday by drinking some wine while we do SheelaNaGig.
Now, you do realize that between the wine and the tea, we may have to take a break.
It's true.
Through.
We may have to pee. I don't know. I don't know. It was kind of a lightweight, too, so, you know.
Yes, yeah. So this could be a very interesting
It's also
segment.
National Cow Milked While Flying on an Airplane Day.
Wait, say that again?
Cow milked while flying in an airplane day.
I didn't know. Never mind. Cows on
that's
an airplane.
That's strange. It's Gambia Independence Day. That's good. National
for
Battery
letting us know.
Day. Oh, this is a good one. It's National Crab Stuffed Flounder Day.
Oh, well.
You know.
Good to know.
Yeah, yeah. And Pluto Day. Thumb Appreciation Day.
Everybody raise your thumb in appreciation.
I'm happy to have plums. I'm happy to have thumbs. Are you happy to have thumbs, April?
I am. They serve quite a big purpose.
Yeah. A lot of animals don't have thumbs. We have thumbs. Travel Africa Day. NBA All-Star Game. Okay, that's it.
Well, I'm glad you covered these
very important holidays. It's true.
Although I will say the National Drink Wine Day, near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. In fact, let's have another sip on that. On that note, let's cheers.
Cheers! Let's cheers. Okay.
Okay.
Here's to our Sheela of the day.
Yeah. Who is our Sheela of the day?
Well, funny you should ask. Because Cleopatra, who's not my Sheela for today, might be the most famous Egyptian woman, but her compatriot, who is my Sheela for today, our Sheela, is Huda Shaarawi.
Ooh.
And she was just as influential in her time as our dear Cleopatra was back in the day. Huda Shaarawi, or Huda as we love to call her, was born on June 23rd, 1879. And she was known as a pioneering Egyptian feminist leader, suffragette, nationalist, and the founder of the Egyptian Feminist Union. And when I say that is the tip of the iceberg, this woman just blew me away.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. I just have to say, remember I told you a while back I was having a Sheela I was really struggling with because I couldn't stop going down these rabbit holes?
Yeah.
And we talked about maybe...
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, this is the second time we've done this.
I know, it was Huda. And so
wow.
I did learn a bit about her, but I just went down a lot of rabbit holes, and I was so interested. There were so many interesting aspects of her life. I think I told you, I just found it kind of overwhelming. So I had to kind of put it on the back burner.
See, this is how I'm going to rescue you, because I don't go down as many rabbit holes. So we're just like, okay.
I have a few rabbit holes to share. I don't know.
Wow. Well, I'm excited to talk about her, and I just want to, Missy, invite you to chime in wherever you have information about Huda.
Okay.
Because
whatever I can remember, it's been a bit.
Right.
She is fascinating.
She
fascinating
is a
woman.
Definitely fascinating woman. And
so progressive for her time.
Oh my God, she was ahead of her time in so many ways. Yeah. She was the daughter of Iqbal Hanan and Mohammed Sultan Pasha Sharawi, who later became president, the dad, of Egyptian's Chamber of Deputies. Sharawi described her mother as melancholic and often carrying this profound sadness. Her father was a landowner and, again, very prominent in Egyptian politics. And she chronicled a lot of her early years of life in her memoir, The Harem Years. But Huda Shaarawi's story didn't begin in 1919. By that time, she was already 40 years old and well established. As I mentioned, she was born in 1879 to this wealthy, influential Egyptian family, and she was kept in her harem. And her father, Mohammed Sultan Pasha, was a lord owner, as we were saying. And the one thing was he valued education, including the education of women. And so he enabled Huda to learn a lot more than most girls of her age and class. Wow, she received instruction not only in Arabic, but in French and Islam. She wrote poetry, music, calligraphy, and she did painting. She was just really educated, rounded. She read a lot of literature. But she was very much a woman of the time, and her father was a patriarch. And although he had a progressive attitude towards her becoming educated, he insisted that she, like many of her fellow sisters, marry according to his decisions. And he had her marry her older cousin, Ali Sharawi.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And although she looked up to him, she saw him more as a father figure than a husband. He was so much older than her, and he was, at the time of their marriage, one of the leading figures in the nationalist movement, which grew stronger after the turn of the century. Huda was 13 years old when she was forced to marry Ali.
Oh my God.
But there is a little silver lining here. She resisted living with him for 7 years of her marriage, during which time she was receiving a lot of her education.
I think he went back to his original wife at that point.
He might
because it was her father's wish, right? Mm-hmm. And then her father died, so it was his dying wish.
Uh-huh.
So she marries her cousin, and then she doesn't want to live with the cousin. He doesn't really want to live with her. I don't think either one of them really. They had a good relationship, but it was like a father-daughter relationship.
Yes.
It had to have been kind of strange.
Yes.
So I think he actually went back to his wife at that point for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And she went on to do whatever. That worked out really nicely because she could do whatever she wanted for 7 years.
They did. A lot of that was cultivating her education and really reaching out to other women and educating them and empowering them.
Right.
She was 20 years old before they actually moved in together, and apparently that was something that was imposed upon her. It wasn't something she really wanted to do.
What a bummer.
And at that point, Ali agreed to remain monogamous to her.
Okay.
In 1900, under pressure from her family, though, like I said, she had to move in with him. And they did have 2 children together, a daughter, Bathina, in 1903 and a son, Mohammed, in 1905.
Gotcha. I wonder what happened to his first wife. You always feel so sorry for, these women just get pushed aside. Okay, time for my next wife.
The culture was that a lot of these men did have multiple wives and many children, and as you said, concubines,
right.
And so it wasn't that out of the ordinary for that dynamic to happen. For us, it's appalling because we don't do that here. At least most of us don't.
No, we don't.
And not legally. But anyway, as an affluent young woman, Huda got involved early on in philanthropy. That was something that was common to women in the upper economic echelons as she was. Mm-hmm. And this included for her not only social assistance for vulnerable women and children, but she also developed initiatives that provided income opportunities and financial independence. She loved educating women and empowering women. And she, like I said, she went out and reached out to women of all classes and really sought to educate, empower. And ever since 1909, she taught on subjects that went well beyond the traditional women's subjects. In her salons in her spacious house in Cairo, affluent districts, she held court in her home for women who wanted to discuss literature, Egyptian politics, and world events. And that was something that most women weren't doing.
How cool.
Yeah. She was increasingly drawn to the anti-colonial activities during World War I. And as I mentioned earlier, she was an activist during the July Revolution of 1919. So one of the things that really set her apart, and I couldn't find, I don't know if you found a lot that was written about her marriage to Ali.
I don't think I ever got that far, actually, April. I think I got really involved in those harem years, I think is what happened.
You went down the harem hole.
I think I could talk a lot about the harem years, but beyond that, I don't remember too much. I don't think I got that far, honestly, like I said.
So I didn't quite understand her relationship with Ali, but one thing was interesting. They were both nationalists who were really fighting for Egypt's independence.
Right.
And as I mentioned, Ali was a member of the government, that WAFT,
yes,
that got formed towards the end of World War II. Mm-hmm. And Ali wanted Huda continually informed of the activities of the WAFT, fearing that if they got arrested, the leaders of WAFT got arrested by the British, or that anything happened to him, she would know how to slip in and fill in for him.
Wow.
So they had some kind of understanding and alliance about their nationalist revolutionary efforts, and he either turned a blind eye to her feminist activities or he endorsed them. It was not clear to me which.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder.
And I thought I'd look up Ali to understand a little bit more about what happened to him in his last years of life.
Yeah.
And guess what? This is hysterical. The only references I found to him were under Huda's.
Oh, I like that.
There was nothing written that I could find about him.
That's just the opposite of Martha Gellhorn and Ernest Hemingway.
I know.
That's good. It's a good thing.
So it appears as though he was involved in the WAFT and involved in the revolution, and somewhere he died. And Huda actually ended up becoming for a very short period, the president of WAFT. She kind of filled in and took over.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that was something that that was sort of agreed upon or understood between them. Although, again, there wasn't a lot of written about this and exactly what transpired.
Huh. Because that was a little counter to what she was actually preaching and doing.
Well, no, because she did care about Egypt's liberation from Britain.
Sure.
And she did agree and fight for that Egyptian independence.
Right.
And when it was finally somewhat achieved, she really began to focus more of her attention on feminism. And she founded the Egyptian Feminist League, which she led until her death in 1947.
Wow. Egyptian Feminist League.
Yeah, the Egyptian Feminist League quickly became known far beyond the country's borders. And she wrote articles, as I mentioned, she was quite fluent in multiple languages. And so she wrote articles about feminist issues, especially in Egypt, but around the world, in a French magazine that was later published in Arabic. And since she was fluent in both English and Farsi, she quickly became one of the leading figures of an international network that was promoting women's rights. So
very cool.
Yeah. So in addition to fighting for the rights of women to vote and seek greater levels of education, she was really dedicated to also getting new family legislation rights for women that included banning child marriages, like her own, when she was 13.
Yeah.
And she took an active part in international peace activism. And after a conference in Rome in 1923 at a train station in Cairo, she very famously greeted a crowd who came to hear her speak by scandalously removing both her veil and headwear that the Egyptian women had historically always worn out in public.
Crazy.
And that moment became iconic in history of Arab feminism. It apparently, when she first did it, the crowd was aghast. They were like, "Ah!" And then they broke out into applause.
Right. I do remember reading about this, and I do remember this is certainly a very bold act.
Yeah, and she writes in her memoirs that she saw it only as a modest element in a painstaking work of both women's liberation and colonial liberation. Mm. For her, that was an act of both.
Right. And I think I remember that it was the veil was only worn by the wealthiest women at that point. It was a status symbol.
It was and she abhorred it. She hated it. Right. And so for her, lifting it off and removing it in public was such an important act. And while she didn't see it as the most important act, it was something that defined her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So all of the political activism of the time forced the British to make some concessions towards Egyptian self-government in 1922, but they really didn't want to give up their military bases or control of the Suez Canal or the rule of Sudan or the right to intervene on behalf of Egypt's Christian and Jewish minorities. So the leader at the time of WAIFT, Sayed Zagwel, became the prime minister on behalf of the WAIFT party that had led the call for independence. And although the rights of the National Assembly over which he presided was severely limited, this step really did advance Egypt's reach for independence. Sharawi was the national choice as the leader of the Women's Union of the WAIFT party, and as I mentioned earlier, at that time served as the first president. But she resigned just a few years later because she felt that Zagwel was way too lenient and friendly with the British, very chummy. And her heart was really much more in the feminist effort, leading the feminist movement. And her efforts in the international arena took on more and more of her time. She really wanted to build bridges between Western and Arab feminists, and she felt it was her duty to convince European women's organizations that support for independence in the colonies was an important step towards female equality.
Absolutely.
And apparently at the time she had compromised health. She was starting to ail, but she was constantly on the move, giving conferences and interviews, providing lectures in numerous countries, including Denmark, where she was a very sought-after writer and speaker in Arabic, French, and in English. Mm. So with all of her travels and public appearance and her fights for women's rights and the rights of colonies under British rule, Huda Shaarawi's heart had begun to become strained, and in 1947 she fell ill and died. And there have been several books and dozens of journal articles about her life in recent times. Her memoirs, as I was referencing earlier, have become translated and published in English, and a close and informative portrayal of her has been given by one of her grandchildren.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah. Her memoir was translated and abridged into English version about her harem years, which again, she abhorred and was the catalyst, I think, of a lot of her dynamic work.
Wow. She's amazing. Amazing woman, and like I said, it's super ahead of her time.
Way ahead of her time.
Not just in terms of the time, but culturally as well. I mean, you have to think about being in a very patriarchal society as she was.
Absolutely.
And that she was willing to speak out. She was willing to take those risks she took.
Mm-hmm. It said that Egyptian women's struggles today stands on the shoulders of many historical role models, and the most influential among them all was our Sheela, Huda Shaarawi.
Yay. Yay, Huda.
Yeah.
I like Huda. I think I like her better than Cleopatra.
Well, I think she really stuck her neck out there more than once, and she really practiced what she preached and lived it every day of her life.
Yeah. She really seemed to. She really seemed to. Oh, wow, I want to read her book, The Harem Years.
Oh, yeah. In fact, Missy, I'm sure if you do, or we should both do it, we can do a follow-up on this about harems. And
we could start a book club.
Oh, there's an idea.
No, I cannot start a book club because I used to be a big reader. Obviously, I'm a big researcher because of the podcast. I'm a podcast journalist. I have to be a researcher. And I love reading, but I used to read a lot more than I do now. Once I had kids, it just was not as easy.
You know, as somebody who has kids that are older,
yeah,
that it all comes back to you
That's
later
what I've
on.
been told.
Yes.
That's what I've been told, that it will come back to me. And I'm really hoping that's the case because I do miss reading, and I think part of doing our podcast, we were saying earlier, it's kind of that itch that needed to be scratched because
Definitely.
It does. I do end up reading a lot. I just discovered this book. I was doing a bunch of cleanup in my bedroom. I got rid of a lot of stuff this past weekend, but I found this really great book that my husband probably gave me, I don't know, 5 years ago. And I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Wild Irish Women in History.
Ooh.
And I started reading and I said, oh my God, there's some good Sheilas in here. You know, my husband and I play in an Irish band together. We have for 25 years. It's called Paddy's Pig here in LA. And so I love Irish culture. My grandmother was from Ireland. So it's fun. It's a fun thing to celebrate but I'm just like, this is perfect. How did he know? Yeah.
But I will say, enjoy the time that you spend right now chauffeuring your kids and getting them everywhere, and just because when it's gone, it is, baby, it's gone. No. There are other things.
My husband is at volleyball practice with Ellery tonight because I'm here doing my podcast with April. So I'm not at volleyball practice
tonight. You've done your fair.
I'm there often, but not tonight.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm glad you're here with me. Drinking wine.
Drinking wine because it is National Drink Wine Day.
It is.
So by the time you're listening to this, that day will have passed. But still feel free to honor this day. I highly recommend it.
You can listen to this podcast and open a bottle of wine.
Yeah,
open a glass of wine.
Just chug a whole bottle, right, April? Yes. Oh my God.
As often as you want.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, have some wines. Wait, say it with your great accent.
What?
Have yourself some wine.
Have yourself some wine. What's a little wine with some cheese and just put your feet up and enjoy the essence of Drink Wine Day.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, April. Thank you for sharing that in your awesome New York accent.
Thank you for doing some work on our wonderful Sheela.
Well, again, I had just a few little things, but now I want to go back down the tributary, and I'm glad you tackled her because I couldn't get from underneath the harem years, honestly. Like I said, it's so interesting. There's so much to learn. So I learned a lot, and I appreciate that. That's what I love about our podcast. I feel like I get excited. I mean, obviously, I love to share my Sheilas, but I get really excited to hear about, who April's Sheela is going to be, because then I get to sit here and listen and learn.
Same here, definitely.
And I love it. And you know what I realized when listening back? I say, wow, a lot. But honestly, wow, I think that a lot. Wow. These women are freaking amazing. Wow. That's all I can think of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they kick ass. So we are delighted that you joined us. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in next week, and please send us your comments and your questions. We greatly appreciate it.
We do.
Have a great night. Go drink some wine.
Go drink some wine.
Okay. Bye.
Sheela, Sheela, Sheela.